Something has changed. You are not sure what, exactly. The air is the same weight it was yesterday, or nearly so. The trees around you hold the same shape against the sky. The ground beneath your feet is dry, packed, familiar. But something in the quality of the morning is different. A shift so small you almost let it pass. The light, maybe. It arrives at a slightly different angle than it did some mornings ago. Not dramatically, not in a way you could point to and name. But you notice it the way you might notice a stone that has moved from one side of a path to another, not because you measured it, but because your body remembers where things were. You stand still for a moment. The air moves across your forearms. It is cooler than the air was last week. Not cold, just less warm, less soft. There is something at the back of it. Something faint and dry, like the breath of an open space far away. You tuck your arms slightly closer to your sides. It is such a small movement, almost nothing. But something in you has already decided that the warmth of the morning is not to be assumed. Wherever you are as you listen to this, whatever stillness or darkness surrounds you, let it become a kind of clearing, a quiet, open place. And let your body, just for now, grow as unhurried as the world you are about to move through. The air shifts again. You close your eyes for just a moment. You let the coolness settle against your skin without pulling away from it. This is where we begin. You move through the grass slowly. The blades are shorter than they were in the full warmth of the previous months, not dying, just drawing back into themselves, pulling their energy downward, toward the root, toward the dark. You notice this the way you notice most things, without naming it, without conclusion. Just a small fact your eyes bring to the rest of you. There are birds in the trees behind you. They are louder this morning than they have been in recent days. Not frantic, but urgent in a way that feels purposeful. Some species, research suggests, change their vocal patterns weeks before any human would register a seasonal shift. Their bodies have read the shortening of the light with a precision that moves ahead of language. You listen to them without trying to understand. Then, the sound shifts. A sudden quietness falls between calls, as if a cloud has passed across the sun. You look up. There is no cloud. But the birds have gone quiet anyway. You keep walking. The ground slopes gently downward ahead of you. Toward water. You have walked this way many times before, and your feet find the path without needing to be told. This is one of the quiet gifts of a life spent moving through familiar land. The body accumulates knowledge the mind never formally records. The memory lives in the soles of your feet, in the slight lean of your hips as the ground tilts. The grass gives way to soft soil near the water's edge. You crouch beside the stream and hold your palm just above the surface. The water is noticeably cooler than it was in the height of the hot months. You do not have words for the measurements. But your palm remembers warmth, and this is less than warmth. You drink. The water has a faint mineral edge to it, different from the soft, almost floral taste it carries in the wet season. The stream is lower, too. The flat stones in the middle are exposed, their tops dried pale and rough. Animals have been here before you this morning, tracks pressed into the mud on the far bank, something that moved carefully, deliberately, the way animals move when they are drinking and watching at the same time. You sit back on your heels and look at the water for a while. It moves without hurrying. It does not seem concerned with where it is going. You watch the surface catch the morning light in broken pieces, shifting constantly, holding nothing still for long. There is a particular kind of rest that comes from watching moving water. Not sleep, but something adjacent to it. The mind quiets in the same way a pond quiets after a stone has passed through it, the ripples moving outward until there is only smoothness. By mid-morning, the sun is higher but not hot. This is different from what you remember. There were mornings in the deep of the warm season when the sun reached this height and the air turned thick, golden, almost heavy with heat. You would slow down. Seek shade. Sit against a rock or the wide base of a tree and let the afternoon pass over you like a wave. Today the sun climbs to the same height and the air stays cool. You roll your shoulders. The slight tension that gathered in the cool of early morning has not fully released. Your body is holding a little more of itself than it did in the warm months. This is not discomfort. Not exactly. It is something more like preparedness, a quiet bracing, the body doing what it has always done when the air carries a hint of what is coming. You walk across an open stretch of land. The grasses here are tall and turning. Some have gone brown at the tips, golden further down. In the still air, nothing moves, and the landscape has a kind of locked quality, like something paused between states, not quite what it was and not yet what it will become. You pick up a dry seed head. Roll it between your fingers. It disintegrates easily, scattering small seeds across your palm and then into the ground as you open your hand. The plants are letting go of what they spent the whole warm season making. Everything they gathered, every hour of light converted into green, is now being released. Going back into the earth. Into the small birds that have started passing through in greater numbers. Into you, if you gather quickly enough. This has become important. The gathering, you know, not through reasoning but through experience repeated over many seasons, that the abundance of the warm months does not continue. The berries that grew heavy and sweet on the southern-facing slopes will shrink and dry. The fish in the wide river to the east will be harder to find in the cold months, staying deeper, moving slower. The roots are still in the ground keeps them, preserves them, but the signs above the surface are coming to an end. Early humans likely spent significantly more time in autumn gathering and preserving food than in any other season. The work was not desperate, it was rhythmic, habitual. The body understood the task the way it understands breathing. You continue walking. There's a stand of trees ahead, older ones, their canopies wide and beginning to thin. The leaves have not turned fully yet, but some are starting. A pale yellow at the edges, a brownish flush along the veins of the largest ones. When you step beneath the canopy, the light that comes through is different from summer. It reaches the ground more easily now, dappling the earth where before it barely touched. The shadows are softer, less absolute. You press your back against the rough bark of the widest trunk. The bark is warm on the sun-facing side. Not hot, but carrying warmth the way stones carry it, slowly absorbed and slowly released. You let your weight settle against it. The ground is dry and covered with the first fallen leaves, and they make a faint sound beneath you, a papery whisper that you feel as much as hear. You stay there for a while. Not long, just long enough. The wind picks up in the afternoon. It comes from the north, from the direction where the land opens up and the hills flatten into something vast and colorless. You know this wind. Not from this particular day, but from all the days like it in all the seasons past. This wind carries the cold in it, not the cold itself, not yet, but the promise of it. The way a river carries the color of mountains it has already passed. You find a hollow in the hillside as the wind strengthens. It is not a proper shelter, just a concavity in the earth where a ledge of stone overhangs slightly, forming a shallow alcove in the hillside. But it is enough. The wind moves above you and around you instead of through you. You press back against the stone and feel the difference immediately. Inside the hollow, still air. Beyond it, movement, pressure, the constant low sound of the wind working across the grass. This is one of the earliest human skills, perhaps the most fundamental, reading the land for protection before it is needed, knowing which side of a rock stays dry in rain, which slope catches the morning sun, which valley holds cold air at night while the ridge above stays warm. You did not learn this from instruction. You learned it from living. The land itself was the lesson, and the lesson took years. You sit in the hollow and watch the grasses flatten in waves as the wind passes. There is something mesmerizing about it, the way the motion travels through the field, a ripple of visible air moving away from you and then another behind it and another, the whole hillside breathing, exhaling. A pair of birds wheels above the ridge line, riding the wind, not fighting it, using it. They hold their wings steady and let the moving air carry them in wide arcs, covering in seconds what would take you many minutes of walking. You watch them until they disappear beyond the ridge. You feel something faintly like envy, but lighter than that, more like admiration. Then the wind softens slightly. Just for a moment. The pressure drops and the air is almost still, and in that stillness you hear something far away, a low sound like the murmur of many wings. A dense flock of small birds moving south, their dark shapes against the pale sky briefly filling your vision before they are gone. Research suggests that early humans paid close attention to animal migration patterns as a reliable signal of coming seasonal change, not consciously, not as a system. But over generations, patterns were recognized. Certain birds appearing meant certain things. Their absence meant other things. The flock disappears. The wind returns. You pull the animal skin you carry more tightly across your shoulders. The quality of evening light is changing. It does not fall so steeply anymore. In the height of the warm season, the sun dropped quickly toward the horizon. A long, slow arc above, and then a sudden descent, the sky briefly flooding with color before darkness. Now the light lingers differently near the horizon, longer and lower. It seems to stretch, spreading thinly across the land before finally releasing. You are moving toward your shelter by the time the light starts to go. In the warm months, you sometimes stayed out past this hour, tracking, gathering, simply sitting as the sky changed color. The warmth made it easy to lose track of time. But now the air drops sharply when the sun goes. Not gradually, not gently. The coolness arrives almost the moment the light begins to fail. And so your body has started making different decisions. Earlier. More cautious, moving toward shelter and fire with a kind of low urgency that isn't fear, but isn't carelessness either. The shelter is a familiar shape against the hillside, a frame of branches covered with hides and woven grasses, low at the sides, higher in the center, angled to deflect rain and wind. Inside, dried grass laid thick across the ground, a small fire pit ringed with stones. The fire pit is cold now, but it holds the memory of heat in its stones. They warm quickly when fire touches them and release their warmth slowly through the night. You gather wood first. The wood you need now is different from the wood you needed in the warm months. Drier, denser, harder. The kind that catches slowly but burns long, filling the shelter with steady, low heat rather than the bright, quick flames of softer wood. You have been collecting this kind all through the turning season, keeping it dry, stacked against the sheltered side of the structure. This is a kind of thinking that has no name, not planning in the way that requires language or deliberate intention, more like a slow accumulation of responses to conditions the same way the body accumulates salt from food or rest from sleep. The future exists as a felt pressure, not a thought. and the pressure is answered with preparation that happens almost without deciding. Fire takes longer this evening. The air is damp, the tinder slightly cool. You coax it carefully, steady breath, slow and low, close to the small spark. The ember grows. You feed it, first the finest dry material, then slightly larger pieces, then larger still. When the fire finally catches and begins to hold its own, you sit back and watch it for a long time. The warmth moves across your face in waves. Inside the shelter, the air is already different, thicker, warmer, carrying the faint scent of smoke and dry grass and earth. The small sounds of the outside world, the wind, the occasional distant call of something moving across the open land, are softened by the walls of woven branch and hide. Not silenced, just reduced, contained. You are inside and the world is outside. This distinction, so ordinary now, was once a profound and transformative thing. In the deep of the night, the temperature drops further. You are half asleep when you feel it, not a sudden cold but a creeping, the air pulling warmth away from the edge of the covering, where it is not tucked quite flush against the ground. You pull the covering more snugly. Turn slightly toward the center of warmth. The fire has burned down to coals, and the coals cast no light, only heat, and the heat fills the small space with a dense animal warmth. Your breathing slows. You are not thinking about the cold. You are not thinking about anything. The awareness that moved through you all day, the attention to wind and light and water and animal sound, has dimmed to almost nothing. The body releases its vigilance as the shelter holds. This is the deep purpose of shelter, not just warmth, but permission to stop watching. You sleep. Morning is different again. There is moisture in the air that was not there yesterday. Something has moved in overnight, a change in pressure, a gathering of cloud from the west. You can feel it before you are fully awake. The air against your face is softer, heavier, the kind of air that arrives before rain. You push back the covering and sit at the opening of the shelter. The sky is pale and even. Not the clear pale of a cold morning, but the flat, diffuse light of overcast. The kind of sky that seems to have no direction in it, light arriving from everywhere at once. The landscape below the shelter looks heavier somehow, stiller. Even the birds are quieter. You wait, not for anything specific, just staying in the moment before going. The morning has a patient quality that matches something in you, a willingness to let conditions announce themselves before moving into them. The first drops of rain come so lightly, you almost mistake them for imagination. A faint prickling across your forearms. Then, your scalp. Then, unmistakable, a drop hitting the dry earth in front of you and darkening it. You move inside without hurrying. The rain begins to fall steadily as you add a piece of dense wood to the coals. The shelter holds. The rain speaks against the outer surface of the hide covering. A soft, continuous sound, irregular and then regular and then irregular again as the wind shifts slightly. You sit near the fire and listen. Rain days are different. In the warm months, rain arrived hot and violent sometimes, sudden heavy downpours that soaked the earth and passed quickly, leaving the air electric and refreshed. This rain is slower, more patient, the kind that settles in and stays, not falling hard but not stopping either, filling the creeks and softening the ground and bringing a new smell up from the earth, something green and mineral, the smell of things absorbing. You stay near the fire. This is part of the life that the warm season never required, the long interior hours, the slower rhythms that come when the outside world asks you to wait. Research suggests that early humans in seasonal environments likely developed richer forms of social bonding, storytelling, and close observation during the colder, wetter months. The enforced proximity of shared shelter created its own kind of depth. But there is no one else here now. Only you. And so the long interior hours are simply hours. The fire. The sound of rain. The warmth that moves in and out of focus as you shift position on the dry grass. Your body is not restless. There is a patience available to you in this moment that would have been harder to access in the rushing fullness of summer. Something about the reduction of the world to this small warm space makes the small warm space feel sufficient. You watch a coal at the edge of the fire slowly reduce itself to ash. It takes a long time. The outer layer crumbles away in almost invisible increments while the center keeps its glow. You forget to watch and then look back, and it is smaller than it was. The rain continues. By midday, the rain has settled into something steadier but lighter, a kind of persistent mist more than rainfall. You step outside briefly to collect more wood from the dry stack. The air outside is cool and wet against your skin. Not unpleasant, invigorating, in a low way. Your lungs open slightly when you step into it, as if the body is glad of the moisture even while the skin closes up against the cold. You move quickly. Gather the wood into your arms. Return to the shelter before the wet can work too far through your clothing. Inside, you sit near the fire again, pulling the wood into the dry zone closer to the heat. The firewood, drying, gives off a faint steam at first. You watch it go. The steam curls upward and disappears into the smoke hole at the top of the shelter. A small perfect system, the shelter breathing, the heat rising, the cold air drawn in low and exiting warm at the top. Someone, in some generation before yours, understood this well enough to build it this way. The knowledge exists in the structure, passed forward through the act of making. The afternoon moves slowly. You work on something with your hands, a piece of sinew, wound and rewound around 2 bone points, creating a cord with a particular resistance. It is not new work. Your hands know the motion. The movement requires almost no attention, which means attention can go elsewhere, can diffuse, can rest at the surface of awareness without catching on anything. The rain outside sounds like thinking, that low continuous sound with its subtle variations, heavier for a moment, lighter again, a brief pause, then back to its steady murmur. You are not listening to it the way you would listen to something that might require a response. You are just inside it, the same way you might be inside a particular kind of silence. Your hands work, your eyes rest, the fire ticks and shifts. Time passes at a different speed than it does in summer. Not slower, exactly, but less marked. In the hot months, the sun is a clear measure, rising quickly, tracking across the sky in a visible arc, arriving at known positions at known times. Today there is no sun, just a diffuse whiteness that changes imperceptibly from the gray of morning toward the slightly different gray of afternoon toward the barely darker gray that signals evening. You only know it is getting late because you feel it. A drop in temperature, a shift in what the body wants, something in you that moves toward rest with more persistence than it did 2 hours ago. You add wood to the fire. There are days when the weather holds still. Not every morning brings change, not every afternoon brings wind or rain or shift. There are stretches, sometimes many days together, when the sky is clear and pale and the air is cold but constant, and the land seems locked into a single sustained note. On these days you move more. When the weather is settled, however cold, Movement is possible, and movement is what keeps you warm. You have learned this in the way you have learned everything, by experiencing the consequences of both options. A still body in cold air loses its warmth slowly but consistently. A moving body stays ahead of the cold, generates its own heat, arrives at evening already slightly warm, the fire needing only to supplement rather than provide. You walk out across the open land on a clear cold morning. The frost is still on the grass in the shadowed places, not heavy, just the fine white fuzz of a first frost barely there, each blade tipped with crystal. Where the sun has reached, the frost is gone. You can see the line of the sun's progress across the slope, a clear division between shadow frost and sun-bare ground. You walk the sunside. The landscape is quieter than it was even 2 weeks ago. The insect sounds that underscored every moment of the warm season have mostly gone. There are no crickets. The bees have vanished. Even the birds have reduced, not absent but fewer, the variety narrowed, the resident species suddenly more visible now that the summer visitors have moved on. You notice the tracks of a deer along the edge of the tree line. The tracks go into the forest and do not come back out, or come back out in a different place that you cannot see from here. Deer move differently in the cold season. They conserve. They cluster. They choose the denser parts of the forest where the trees hold heat and break wind. Research suggests early humans were aware of these behavioral changes in the animals they shared territory with, adjusting their own movements to stay in proximity to animal populations through seasonal transitions. You follow the tree line but do not enter the forest yet. The open land has its own utility. You can see in all directions out here, can read the sky for incoming weather, can spot movement at great distances. The forest offers warmth and cover but narrows the view. This is always the calculation, the balance between exposure and concealment, between the broad visible world and the close protected dark. You walk until the sun is fully up and the air has lost its sharpest edge. Your legs carry you without being asked. The rhythm of walking on open ground is one of the most ancient and restful forms of being, the body in motion, the mind unfocused, attention drifting between what is near and what is far without landing on either. The ancient Greek thinkers apparently understood something of this, but the practice was older than language, older than thought. This is simply what a body does when it is well and moving through familiar land. You reach higher ground by mid-morning. The elevation changes things. Even a modest rise offers a different relationship to the cold. The wind is stronger here, moving without obstruction, and the air has a clarity that is almost visual, as if the world at this height has been rinsed clean. You can see a long way. To the south, the broad valley where the river bends, the trees along its banks still holding more color than the forest to the north. A smear of green persisting in the low ground where the water keeps things milder longer. To the west, open land, brown and pale gold, extending to where the land meets the sky at a low, dark ridge line. To the north, the forest, darker and more dense, already entered into something like dormancy. The canopy there is nearly bare. The vertical lines of bare trunks make the forest look different, more open in one sense, more austere in another. A place of stripped-down essentials. You turn slowly in place, taking it in without hurrying. There is something particular about standing high and looking far. The scale of the world becomes available in a way it isn't when you are down in it, the curves of the land, the patterns made by water, the way the tree cover thins at certain elevations and densifies at others. You cannot think too small up here. The view insists on bigness. The wind pushes steadily from the west. You note this the way you note everything, not as data to be stored but as current information added to the ongoing picture. A west wind in this season usually means the weather will hold for another day or two. The big systems come from the north, and the northern sky right now is pale and empty. You sit on a flat stone near the top of the ridge. The stone has been sitting in the sun for several hours and it holds warmth in its surface, not dramatically, but enough. You place your palms flat against it and feel the warmth move into your hands. Your hands have been slightly cold for most of the walk. The warmth of the stone is a specific pleasure. You eat a little of what you are carrying: dried meat, thin and tough, and a handful of small dried berries. Hard now and intensely sweet in the way that dried fruit is sweet, concentrated, the water gone, the flavor left behind in a dense small package. You chew slowly. Below you, a hawk works the hillside. It moves in long, slow passes, riding the updraft along the slope, its head tilting slightly at irregular intervals as something catches its attention below. You watch it for a long time. It is not hurrying either. The wind shifts in the early afternoon. It comes now from a different direction, from the northwest rather than the west, and carries something in it. A different quality of cold. The kind of cold that has traveled a long way. You feel it on the back of your neck, on the exposed skin of your hands, and your body registers it before your mind has formed any thought about it. You stand. You do not decide to go. You simply find yourself no longer sitting. The body, reading the air, reading the quality of the light which has shifted slightly toward the flat and colorless, reading something in the pressure or the smell or something too subtle to name, has made a decision. And the decision is, move toward shelter before conditions change. This is how most decisions were made, not from above, from below, the body leading, the mind following. You begin the descent from the ridge. It goes faster than the climb. Your feet know the way down, and the slope works with you rather than against you. The wind drops as you move below the ridgeline, sheltered by the slope itself, and the air goes immediately quieter, stiller. The temperature doesn't change much, but the felt coldness does. Wind makes cold immediate. Still air makes it abstract. You pass through the edge of the forest briefly. Inside, the sound of wind in the high canopy above you, but not the wind itself. The bare trees carry the sound down without transmitting the force. An odd dissociation. You can hear the storm above you while standing in relative stillness below it. The light in the forest is different on this kind of day, flat and even, coming from no particular direction, filtered through cloud and then through canopy and arriving at the forest floor softened almost to dimness. You walk through it without stopping. The other side of the forest opens into the valley where the stream is. You can hear the water from here. It has come up slightly from the recent rain. Its sound fuller, more insistent. You cross quickly, stepping stone to stone, the water rushing below your feet fast and cold and clear. The shelter, by late afternoon, has become the whole world. Outside, the wind has strengthened. The light is failing early, the cloud cover pulling dusk forward an hour before its natural time. Inside, the fire, built up to a steady burn. The warmth that has accumulated through the day in the stone walls of the fire pit now radiating back. The dried grass floor, disturbed and rearranged, shaped into a resting place. You lie down. The fire is not large, but it is steady. The shelter walls hold against the wind. You can feel the structure flex very slightly under strong gusts, a subtle shifting, and then it holds. The hides and woven grass do their quiet work. Your body begins to release the day. This is a particular unwinding, different from the ordinary unwinding of sleep, because the day you are releasing was a physical one, and the release is physical too. The muscles of your legs, which carried you up the ridge and down and across the valley and over the stones, let go of their readiness. A warmth spreads from the core outward. Your hands, which carried and gathered and worked, flatten against the ground. The cold outside is now irrelevant. Not gone. You know it is there. You can feel it in the air at the far edge of the shelter away from the fire. You can hear it in the sound of the wind and in the occasional creak of a branch outside. But it cannot reach you here. This is a fact that lands in the body without words, the way most important facts land, as a simple settling, a reduction of held tension. You are warm. The fire shifts, drops a note lower in its burning. You listen to it go quiet. Days accumulate. The season deepens slowly. You do not experience it all at once. It arrives in increments, each day slightly more itself than the day before. The change is so gradual that each individual morning seems almost the same as the last, while the aggregate of many mornings becomes unmistakable. There are mornings when the frost is heavier, when the grass near the stream is white and stiff and the water at the very edge has a thin skin of ice, clear and fragile, which shatters when you touch it. These mornings you move with more deliberateness, less wandering. There are afternoons when the sun emerges through gaps in the cloud, and for a few hours the world is flooded with cold, clear light, a brightness that is not warm but is somehow warming nonetheless, the light reaching into places that have been in shadow for many days. You orient toward it. Turn your face into it. This is instinctive. The body, in this season, seeks light the way it seeks heat, because they often arrive together, and because the body is paying forward into the darkness ahead. Early humans living through seasonal cycles would have experienced what we now understand as pronounced shifts in mood, energy, and alertness in response to changing day length. The biology of this is ancient, much older than humanity itself. The light matters. You feel it matter. One morning you walk to where the water broadens and slows. This is not the fast stream of the valley, but the place where the land flattens and the water spreads out over a wide, shallow bed of gravel. In the warm months this place was alive, wading birds in the shallows, fish visible in the clear water, the surface covered in the small circles of insects landing and lifting. Today it is quieter. The birds are mostly gone. The fish are fewer and slower. You sit on the flat bank. The water reflects the pale sky, a perfect gray mirror, barely disturbed by the slow current. A single leaf floats past, brown and curled, moving without hurrying. You watch it travel. It catches against a small stone, hesitates. Then the current releases it and it continues. Something about the water in this season has a quality of holding. In summer, the river seems to be going somewhere urgently. In this cold, still light, it seems to simply be. Moving because motion is what rivers do, but not in a hurry to arrive. You stay longer than you intended. The cold in the air is not uncomfortable. It has become familiar, a texture to the world rather than an assault. Your body has adjusted over many weeks of deepening cold, layer by layer. The fat reserves of the summer's abundance, the slight thickening of the blood, the patterns of rest and movement that generate and conserve heat. This is how the body meets the season, not by resisting it, but by becoming appropriate for it. You are not the same person who sat beside a hot stream in the full heat of summer. That person and this person are continuous but different. Different posture. Different internal rhythms. different sensitivities. The season writes itself on the body as the body moves through the season. The deep cold comes, not gradually anymore. There is a night when the temperature falls in a way that is qualitatively different from anything that has come before. A fall that goes past the usual threshold and keeps going. You feel it in the shelter even with the fire maintained. The cold finds edges that have been sufficient until now and works through them. You adjust. More insulating material against the ground. The fire kept larger through the night, which means waking to tend it, a pattern you have fallen into without deciding to, your body surfacing from sleep at intervals to register the temperature and respond. You add wood. The fire rises. You go back to sleep. This is one of the profound reorganizations that cold requires. Sleep itself becomes intermittent. Not restless, but no longer the long unbroken stretch of warm nights. The body wakes, tends, sleeps again. Research suggests this segmented sleep pattern may have been far more common historically than the single consolidated sleep period that modern life has normalized. The body in cold seasons needed to remain slightly watchful, never fully released. But there is rest inside each interval. Genuine, deep rest. You move between sleep and tending with a rhythm that becomes its own kind of peace. The transition from sleep to brief wakefulness is not abrupt. You surface slowly, register the cold, act on it, and ascend again. The fire and the sleep become partners. Neither one works without the other. On the coldest mornings, you do not go far. This is another adjustment. The territory of a day contracts. In summer, you might cover great distances, following the river bend, climbing the ridge, crossing to the far valley. In deep cold, the useful radius shrinks. You stay closer to the fire, to the shelter, to the known landmarks of the immediate area. This contraction is not defeat. It is intelligence. The body calculating, not consciously but accurately, that the expenditure of energy required for long cold travel is not matched by what can be found far away. The close world, carefully worked, yields enough. A short walk to the stream for water. A scan of the near hillside for tracks. Tending the woodpile, keeping it organized and dry, which is a form of work that directly sustains the next several days. You become intimate with a small area, the way the light moves across the slope in front of the shelter, the patterns of ice on the stream where it forms first, where it lingers longest, where it never quite freezes because the current is too strong. The particular tree at the edge of the clearing whose bark holds moisture differently from the others, whose base is always slightly warmer, where small animals come to shelter. This kind of knowing, this deep familiarity with a small patch of earth, is one of the most ancient forms of intelligence. The accumulated, embodied, specific knowledge of a place. It cannot be transferred through words. It lives in having been there, having paid attention, having stayed. There comes a day in the deep cold when the sky has a particular quality of light. Not the flat gray of overcast, not the pale blue of clear cold morning, but something else, a brightness that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, a uniform, luminous white. You know this light. You have seen it before, always just before the same thing. You step outside. The air is very still, cold in a profound way, the kind of cold that has settled in and stopped moving, that has committed to itself. There is something waiting in it, a density. The first flake is almost invisible. You see it only because you are looking up, a single small crystal falling so slowly it seems to be suspended. Then another. Then several. Then more than you can count individually, and the counting stops mattering because the air is full of them, moving down in gentle spiraling paths, catching the pale light on their flat surfaces as they turn. You hold out your hand. One lands on your palm and melts immediately, leaving a small cold circle of water. Then another. Then they are coming faster and you watch your hand disappear under a thin white layer that accumulates in the cup of your palm. Snow changes everything, not violently. Slowly. Muffling. The sounds of the world reduce one by one as the snow accumulates. The grasses are covered first, their dried seed heads disappearing under a growing white layer. The stones along the stream bank go next, smoothed into anonymous white humps. The tracks of last night's deer are filled and erased. The world simplifies. Edges disappear. The sharp distinction between objects softens into gradients. You stand in it for a while. Then you go inside. There is a particular quality of time inside a shelter in heavy snow. The world outside is not gone, you can still hear it, faintly, through the walls. The weight of snow against the outside surface of the shelter is a sound and a feeling both. The fire inside is doubly important today, not just for warmth, but for light, because the snow has blocked the light from outside and the interior has gone dim. You feed the fire carefully. The flames rise and the light rises with them, and the interior of the shelter comes back into full visibility. The texture of the hide walls, the grain of the wooden frame, the arrangement of everything familiar and close. This small world you have made. It is sufficient. You reach the simplest kind of peace, not contentment in an active sense, not happiness as a feeling that requires comparison to unhappiness. Something more fundamental, the peace of a body that is warm and safe and still, a body that has worked and now rests, a body that has moved through a season and arrived, intact, at the center of it. The fire holds. The snow falls outside, and the shelter holds, and you are inside. Weeks later, something changes again. You notice it in the light first. The same light that shifted to signal the start of the cold has shifted again, barely, almost imperceptibly, in the other direction. The mornings are still cold and dark, and the snow is still on the ground, and nothing has spoken the word that there is a change coming. But the body knows. It registers the extra few minutes of light at the end of the day with something that isn't quite excitement, but is something like it. An unconscious brightening. You stand outside the shelter in the early evening of a clear day. The sun has just gone below the ridgeline to the west. The sky is still lit, pink and pale orange at the horizon, deepening to blue and then to the first dark overhead. The cold is sharp and precise. But the light above you is extraordinary in its stillness, its evenness, its almost tactile quality. It is the light of transition, not the old season and not yet the new one. You stand in it for as long as it lasts. The cold works at the edges of your awareness, but you don't respond to it yet. You are watching the sky go through its stages, the color draining from the west as the east deepens, the first stars appearing like memories of light rather than light itself. Then the cold wins, and you go inside. But something has shifted. The body carries it. A faint restlessness that is the opposite of the contraction of deep winter. The territory of the imagination has expanded slightly. The distances that seemed abstract and impossible in the depths of cold have begun again to feel thinkable. The thaw comes in stages. First the south-facing slopes, which always see the sun first and hold it longest. The snow there begins to soften before it begins to retreat. You can see the change in texture from a distance. the bright hardness of recent snow becoming something slightly dimmer, slightly rough. Then it pulls back from the edges. The rock shows first, the dark, wet stone, glistening, warmer already than the snow around it. You find yourself standing in the first bare patch on the hillside. The ground under your feet is soft. Not the frozen hardness of midwinter, but something beginning to yield. You press your heel into it and feel it give slightly, a squeak and then a firmness beneath, still cold deep down. But the surface is waking. The sound of moving water comes back. Through most of the cold, the stream had gone quiet, slowed and partially frozen, its voice reduced to a murmur. Now it rises again. The snowmelt feeds it from above, adding volume and speed. You hear it from a distance before you reach it, and the sound has a quality of return that you feel in your chest, something opening. You crouch beside the stream and watch the water. It is turbid now, cloudy with silt and movement, not the clear water of winter stillness. The force of it has changed. It pushes against the stones with purpose, turning and folding around them, filling the air with its sound. The banks are still half frozen where shade reaches them, but midstream the water is free and fast. A small bird lands on a stone in the middle of the current. You have not seen this bird for many months. It bobs slightly, looking at the water, and then it is gone, not flying away but diving directly into the current, disappearing completely, reappearing downstream on another stone as if the whole thing were nothing. You watch it do this again. Then again. You stay beside the water for a long time. The return of warmth is as gradual as its departure. It does not arrive in a day or a week. It comes the same way the cold came, in increments, each morning slightly less cold than the last, each afternoon slightly longer than the one before it. The grass begins first, the first green almost invisible against the pale dead material of winter. A faint underlayer of color that you see only if you crouch low and look at an angle. Then it thickens. Then there is unmistakably new growth, tender and bright, catching the low sunlight at an angle that makes it glow. You eat some of it. The first fresh green of the new season after months of dried and preserved food is a distinct and remarkable taste, sharp, clean, alive. Your body receives it with an enthusiasm that bypasses the mind entirely. You eat more than you intended. Your hands move without being directed, pulling the new shoots and bringing them to your mouth with a kind of urgency that feels almost outside your control. This is one of the body's most honest responses. After months of the dried and the preserved, the living green is unmistakably what the body has been waiting for. With the return of warmth, the territory expands again. You find yourself walking distances that were unthinkable in the depths of cold. Not because you have decided to go far, but because the going has become easy again, the cold no longer the constant tax on every movement, the body generating warmth through motion rather than fighting cold to do so. You climb the ridge again one morning in the early new warmth. The view from the top is different from the last time you were here. The valley is greener. The river bends differently, fuller, faster. The forest to the north, which was a stark pattern of bare trunks, now has a faint haze of early leaf at its edges, the kind of green that is almost invisible but changes the character of the whole. A green mist. The suggestion of what is coming. The wind from the south is warmer. Not warm. Not yet. But warmer than anything you have felt for months, and that difference is vast. It carries moisture and something faintly earthy, the smell of soil warming, of things beginning. You turn your face into it. You stand at the top of the ridge in the wind and the early light, and you feel the season turning beneath you the way a current turns beneath a swimmer. Something large and slow and fully committed to its direction. The world is moving forward. It always is. It always was. Now you are aware of where you are. Not on a ridge, not by a stream. You are still. You are comfortable. The world you have moved through for these past hours is only memory now, only the traces that the mind keeps of long travel, the quality of the wind, the smell of frost, the warmth of fire, the cold water on your palms. Your body has settled. The motion of the day has come to rest, not in a sudden stop, but in a gradual slowing, the way a river slows as it widens, spreading its energy across more surface until there is almost no movement at all. The fire has been burning a long time. You do not need to tend it any more. It is low enough to be steady, high enough to fill the space with warmth. The sounds outside the shelter have reduced. The wind, which was present through so much of the day, has quieted. The world outside is dark and still. Your body is very warm. You are aware of this warmth as a simple fact, the most present and physical thing in your awareness. The weight of covering, the softness of what lies beneath you, the warmth that comes not from any single source but from the accumulated heat of a body that has moved and worked and arrived here, and is now being still. The breathing slows further. Each breath is slightly longer, slightly more complete. Not forced, simply allowed to take its full length, from the first small opening to the full expansion to the slow release. There is nothing being held back and nothing needing to be added. The cold that was present all day exists somewhere beyond the walls of this place. You know it is there. The frost will come again before morning. The stream will be cold. The open land will be pale and still. But that is outside. And you are inside, and the distance between those two things is the whole of what shelter is, not just warmth against cold, not just protection against wind or rain, but permission to be still, permission to stop sensing and responding and adjusting, permission to let the night be the night and the cold be the cold without your involvement. You are not needed out there. You were needed all day, and you were present all day, and the day has been traversed and is now behind you. The fire settles into itself. A small sound, like the last quiet word before a long silence. Your arms grow heavy. The muscles of your face, which have held a slight tension all day, the subtle engagement of eyes watching, ears listening, skin reading, release. Your forehead smooths. Your jaw unclenches. The small muscles around your eyes soften. Your breathing is very slow now. In the old world you have been moving through, sleep came with this same slowness every night. The fire low, the shelter holding, the body releasing its vigilance not because the world had become safe, the world was never safe, not entirely, but because the body understood that this was its moment, its portion of the day, the portion that belonged to rest and not to watching, the portion that belongs to rest. You are in it now. The sound of the fire is very far away, or perhaps it is not far away, but you are. The distance between hearing and not hearing is closing. Somewhere on the other side of this moment, a long way away, unhurried, inevitable, is morning, and morning brings its own quality of air, its own quality of light, its own subtle shift in temperature that the body will register before the mind. But that is then. This is now. now is warm and still and dark, and the sounds of the world outside have become the sounds of inside, and inside and outside are no longer two things but one thing, and that one thing is quiet. You do not need to hold on to anything. The season knows where it is going. The world knows how to turn. Your body knows how to rest. Let it.